Super Tuesday, the Ides of March. This is PrimerTime on UCY.tv, also being simulcast on worldtruth.org and Real Liberty Media. My name is Michael, and I don't know if I'm on the Trump train, but I'm going to tell you what, he makes the media there Britain.
Yeah, I'm Nick, and I'll tell you, I am on the Hofbrau from Munich train. It is good,
you know what?
And it is made of wheat.
That's a not gluten-free for any of us.
No, as a matter of fact, if you're on one of those, can you say faggoty on this show?
I think you just did.
I think I did too. If you're one of those faggoty beer drinkers who wants gluten-free, this is not the beer for you.
Gluten-free is, yeah, that's what really like.
They make cider for that.
Yeah, right. It's in the girls section. Anyhow, so Super Tuesday rolling on. Results coming in look like Trump and Hillary taking it, and that's kind of what we got to say about that, because you know where we stand on both of them, and I begun.
Yeah. See, the big news though is that with Rubio basically ending his campaign, suspending his campaign, he did not come out and endorse anyone to go after Trump.
Sheldon Adelson's going to spank Rubio extra hard for next election.
Yeah. That's not a picture I really want to see in my head.
He'll probably need 3 or 4 Adderalls to get through that one. So, anyhow, historically, today is the Ides of March, and this refers to the assassination of Julius Caesar.
Well, the Ides of March realistically refers to the moon phase of the calendar. It just happens to be the 15th is the date that Caesar was assassinated.
In common usage, it refers to the beware the Ides of March, which portends the date of Caesar's death. Yes, you're absolutely right. It refers to the phase. In honor of that, and us being a firearms, so we'd like to take a look at a few firearms throughout history that have played a part in an assassination. And considering it, Caesar was stabbed to death, that's not really our purview. So, Nick, let's pick a famous event that throughout history that had a firearm involved in it.
Well, I got to go back to what is largely considered to be the start of the Great War. We're talking about the assassination of Franz Ferdinand of Austria, and yeah. So this was a Serbian student, low-level gang member by the name of Gavrilo Princip that used.
And let's talk about this low-level gang for a minute. He was a member of a Serbian communist revolutionary organization.
Yeah.
And you'll find throughout tonight's show that there seems to be an overriding leftist theme to the assassination.
Yeah, we call that a prevailing trend.
The data shows.
Yeah. So Gavrilo Princip was a member of the Black Hand gang, like you said earlier, and he used a Browning Model 1910.
Which is a kind of a groundbreaking pistol for its time. It was a single-action .380 that really became one of the first mass-produced and widely accepted semi-automatic pistols. And it is a predecessor of the 1911 and the Browning high power, and pretty much set the standard for basically was the gold standard for semi-automatic pistols for a good number of years, and especially in Europe for a long time. It's such a robust design. The Soviet Tokarev pistol is an almost exact copy of it in traditional Soviet fashion, where they dumb everything down and make it very, very cheap. It's still a very, very dirty design. They I don't know exactly how many Browning sold, but it was a very, very extremely well-made pistol. Many of the models of that year are still out and in use now.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is that FN, Fabrique Nationale, they went ahead and produced this as a police model, and it was made exclusively for Yugoslavia. So, this put this easily accessible.
The exact model that but this is a pistol design that was made and sold to many countries.
Right.
The model he used was, stamped for the Yugoslav police or whatever.
Right. So it's interesting is that this model 1910 was also used to assassinate Huey Long from governor of Louisiana back in 1935.
So now let's describe this pistol a little bit. It's a single action pistol.
Yep, semi-automatic, blowback operated. So basically, what we're talking about is that one pull of the trigger, one bullet fires, loading the next bullet into the chamber.
And this fires a 380 bullet, which our European friends call the 9x17 millimeter bullet.
Yes.
It's hair shorter than a 9 millimeter NATO bullet. Usually the bullet weights are just maybe 10 grains lighter. They usually run, let's say, 95 to 105 to 85 to 105 grains on the bullet weight, where a 9 millimeter would run 150.
Yeah. So and the difference between that and the 9x19 millimeter, which is commonly referred to as NATO or 9x9 millimeter Luger, is just 2 millimeters in difference in case length. So the actual
and a lighter weight, which gives you a resulting smaller area for powder and
right.
a lower energy. But it was fairly revolutionary at the time. It was certainly very popular in Europe for many.
Right. So and this is one of those that you could say that this pistol had a large role in what basically became the war to end all wars.
Which ended no wars.
Not at all. And as a matter of fact, probably gave rise to more wars about 30 years later.
That's right. And it showed you can control through debt and make a clean profit while doing so.
Yeah. So I think that's my vote for one of the more infamous weapons used in an assassination.
Okay. Well, let's kind of like take a step a few decades later and let's move to the United States, and one of the more famous assassination attempts on a president's life in the United States was the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And this is an interesting story because you can ask about the alleged assassin, and according to there's many questions about it, but I guess the common wisdom dictates, the official story, blah blah blah, quote, is that Lee Harvey Oswald killed him. But there's this is something that gives rise to many thoughts in the nation, and kind of is maybe the first break with the United States is almighty. There's many questions as to whether or not that actually happened, and there's theories as to other weapons used in this. But in just reference to Lee Harvey Oswald, you can ask for his assassination weapon. You have to ask which assassination, because he killed a police officer allegedly and killed a president. So he used different firearms for each. So with the president, Lee Harvey Oswald used a surplus rifle, an Italian made by Mannlicher Carcano, and it's in a 6.5 millimeter cartridge, and surplus rifle. It was very, very cheap at the time. It was bought mail order, and I believe it cost $13.
Yeah, pretty rich for anybody's blood back in the 1960s.
Well, delivered to your door. I mean, that's really sort of a low-priced weapon. It was not. The design of the Mannlicher Carcano is very similar to a Russian Mosin Nagant.
It's got the same profile, yeah.
It's a bolt-action rifle that feeds off of a stripper clip. It's got an internal 5-round magazine. It's available in different lengths. It's available on a carbine model and a regular field model. I think it's got 26-inch barrel or 24-inch barrel, something obnoxiously long like that. And the alleged shooter from the book suppository window.
The book suppository.
The book suppository. He supposedly had a scope that was not correctly mounted, and it was a vintage Italian copy of a sight. Nothing fancy. And Zeiss today is a completely different company than it was years ago.
Yes.
let's talk about the bullet, the 6.5 by 52.
Yeah. So this is like I said, 6.5 millimeter. Um, Basically, what you're looking at is a European hunting rifle. That's what it is. And some of the
Maybe closely associated on the American side would be maybe like a 2.7.
yeah, you're looking pretty close to that. It's
But
got
uh, but
it can be
but
loaded with a 6 round end block magazine or end block clip that leads into the internal magazine. Um, it's one of those very odd profile of a rifle bullet. The bullet itself is extremely long, and you just,
and by extremely long, you don't mean just the bullet in the case itself, but
no,
the
the
actual
actual lead bullet projectile.
sticks out a good distance above the neck unsworded.
Yeah, certainly. Yes. So that's one of those things that when you look in that 6.5 millimeter, you'll see a lot of bullets that tend to have that profile.
And you'll find that rifles that usually chamber a bullet of that profile are not necessarily meant to be fired in rapid succession. Just that profile and that bullet design leads to can lead to some serious problems in chambering if there's any sort of hang up or anything.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would say is different than that would be used, rapid fire would be the 6.5 by 55, which is commonly referred to as a Swedish round.
But that's a completely different bullet design.
Right, right, but it's still in that same 6.5 category.
Right, but it's once again, that rifle, that bullet has a completely different neck where the case is shouldered. It's a much better designed round. Now, one of the interesting facts about the 6.5 by 52 round coming out of the Model 91?
Yes.
Model 91 Mannlicher Carcano rifle is that it can pass through two bodies and end up on a stretcher untouched. That is an amazing fact about that bullet.
Yeah. So, needless to say, it is an effective man-stopping round.
Right. So, what this bullet was actually designed for was top cavalry charges. It was meant to take down a man who was approximately 160 pounds and possibly take down a horse if it was shot in the neck or the head. It's kind of a holdover from a period gone by, very similar to the World War I period before, at the very early stages of the up armoring of World War II. So it's more of a vintage rifle than, it would have been more at home hunting deer than hunting predators.
Yeah, definitely.
Which leads to some of the questions. There's always been rumors of other shooters in the grassy knoll remnant. And there's a school of thought out there that says that it was a Remington XP100 in 221 Remington Fireball. Now, the Remington XP100 is a fairly interesting pistol. It's actually not a rifle now. Imagine, if you would, a bolt-action rifle that has a pistol grip attached and no longer has a stock and is only about 10, 12 inches long in the barrel. There was a couple different models made. And so it's a bolt-action pistol, and 221 Fireball is a predecessor to the 5.56 hardtail.
Yeah, 221 Fireball is commonly referred to as a Wildcat round.
Hey, I got somebody calling in. I can't take it, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So in the 221 Fireball, we've seen that. That's now kind of considered an obsolete round. It was more of a Wildcat cartridge at the time, and it's not necessarily in production in common use now. It did lead to the development of the 223 5.56 cartridge that military uses, and is probably the most common rifle round of those used in the United States.
Yeah. Well, moving on, I think we'd like to show how diverse we are on Primer Time. Let's talk about the assassination of Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, black leader who was kind of advanced at the time, really kind of put the fear of Jesus into the country. A lot of questions around his death, and he was assassinated after a couple of different attempts on his life. He was assassinated after giving a speech, and he was shot by a couple of different attackers. And I believe he was shot with a Mac 10, a 45, and a shotgun.
Yeah, so sawed-off shotgun and a 1911 and what is described as a semi-automatic handgun.
A semi-automatic handgun. So for that time, that is what year is Malcolm X assassinated?
1965.
65. Another semi-automatic handgun. It may have been two 1911s at the time. The sawed-off shotgun is we find that to be kind of common in urban environments, killing, mainly due to the price of the shotgun and the availability of it, and delivers quite a punch up close, and that's pretty much how I think the shooters were within 20, 30 feet of him when they killed him.
Yeah. Well, like I said, a 12 gauge shotgun is going to do a lot of damage. You use the sawed off version, and you're going to do a lot more damage at a very close range.
And there's not a large survivability rate once you start taking multiple hits.
Yeah, no, the 45 caliber is probably the coup de grace, but you know that 12 gauge is gonna get your attention.
And you know the 12 gauge is probably enough to do it. It just may take a couple more seconds to shoot out.
Well, you know
Uh,
you want to make sure you do the job, right?
and I believe it. I believe the job was done as he's no longer speaking. Um, got a couple more. Let's go back to our former royalty of the United States, Massachusetts Kennedy clan. Brother Robert Kennedy of President John F. Kennedy was assassinated a few years after him, and assassinated by a Palestinian fellow who also there's many questions around him, but he used an Ivor Johnson 22 long rifle revolver.
Yep. So when you think about it, you know, Sirhan routinely comes up for parole hearings in California, and they keep him behind bars.
Right, and you know, once again, this is another shooting that, like pretty much every assassination in the United States, you kind of get the media version of it, and once the story comes out, there's always many questions to be asked. Sirhan had a weapon chambered in bullets not found in the victim, and there were more bullet holes in the victim and outside of the victim, in in the walls and things. And Sirhan's gun fired. So anyhow, the Ivor Johnson Cadet 22 is a you could call it a value pistol. It was in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. Ivor Johnson was a moderately sized manufacturer, kind of on its way out of business. Relying on older design. The Cadet is about the size of a J-frame equivalent Smith & Wesson revolver. It's double action. It's got that similar profile, except for it's got a different sort of cylinder release. You don't actually flip out the cylinder and it stays attached to the frame. You actually remove the whole cylinder and a crane, which is actually no longer a crane, it's a locking block. And it's kind of a very dated design. It does work. It's not necessarily good for reloading. It was sort of a cheaper firearm. I remember seeing vintage ads at one time, seeing those for like $22. And, buy it over the counter now at Sears, sort of a thing. Ballistics suggest that Sirhan was shot with a 380.
You mean Robert Kennedy?
I'm I'm sorry, Robert Kennedy was shot with a 380 of unknown make. Those were the bullets pulled from the body and some of the cases found, which did not fit the Ivor Johnson. But that's not the story.
We're not going to nitpick facts.
Yeah, really. I mean, who are we, right?
Yeah.
You know,
So,
low information voters unite.
one of the probably more, I would say one of the more infamous, assassinations probably would have to go back to, the before the 1950s and the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi.
Mahatma Gandhi was a spiritual leader of India, sort of a transitional figure and larger than life in many respects. He kind of like took India out from underneath the British rule, and he was assassinated and by a handgun, and it was a Beretta. I believe that's a
380 Beretta model 1934.
yeah, I was going to say model 1948 or 34, something like that. And this is an older design that Beretta has made. Now, Beretta is one of the oldest manufacturing companies in the world. Pietro Beretta started manufacturing firearms, I believe, in like 1550, something like that. They've been continuously manufacturing firearms today. So the 1934 was a common sidearm in Europe, bought by many military officers. It was privately purchased by many military officers. It was issued by several nations. The Italian army did it at one time. It was pressed into service in the German army. Many were brought back from the war into the United States trophies. Interesting design, capable for the time, but definitely dated.
Yeah, and one of the more interesting facts about the physical appearance of the pistol itself is noting that the magazine has a little curvature that comes off the bottom of the magazine plate and kind of aids as an extended grip for the handguard.
Yeah, a little pinky grip, and we see that in a lot of pocket pistols continued on to today. The model 1934 Beretta released the mag by a heel. There's a little latch on the heel, and pull that back, and the magazine falls out, as opposed to most modern designs now have a button somewhere up here.
Yeah. Up around the trigger guard or the mainframe.
And this represents a kind of a great big difference in the philosophy of the use of the pistols, and from American perspective to European perspective. The pistol sort of is looked at as kind of the Lord's weapon. Somebody of a higher status would use a pistol, or would be a pistol. And you see it more in their ornate design, and rather than their functionality that you would see like in an American issue, or more of something a little bit more Western. That's got a little more American. You kind of see them armed with double action revolvers or a 1911. Usually is what you see. People who are armed, militaries who are armed, will have a little bit more weaponry. It's not something that's necessarily carried for prestige anymore. Would you kind of agree? I mean, you're in the military, you see that.
Yeah, and one of those things is that a lot of these pistols are developed with the use in terms of public security in mind. So talking about police departments, detectives, and they need things that are a little bit more functional, rather than the things that had been previously designed to have a nice aesthetic to them. So
and we see that the nice aesthetic and that more of the artistic and elitism with throughout the European pistol designs, and especially the military pistols. I mean, there's a lot of 32 calibers. There's a lot of bottleneck, 7.5, 7.6 millimeter cartridges. There's a lot of 380. Americans tend to use much larger cartridges. It's not necessarily a show of status.
it's a function.
Right, and this may lead back to the royalty issue versus freedom.
Yeah, and you know when you take a look at that model 1934, I can definitely see where Beretta has turned and taken some of those features and turned that into the 92 series or the M9.
Right. And we, it's kind of an iconic design. And in my mind, the, the just the profile is really where the M9 comes, because the 92 series Beretta, to me, closely most resembles I'd say a Walter B38 combined with a Browning high power. Um, it's the upper would definitely be most like a P38, and the magazine of a Beretta 92 and a Browning high power are nearly identical, save for length and location of the magazine catch. I mean, they're almost the exact same magazine.
Yeah, yeah. So we're kind of jumping all over history here. What's something that's on your mind?
Well, let's go to something that happened within both of our lifetimes. A couple of different things that happened within both of our lifetimes. We go back to 1980 and look at the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, and that's another assassination that kind of timely, considering the shooter John Hinckley Jr. Used what is commonly referred to, or started the trend of being called Saturday Night Special. Used an RG-22 pistol, which right now is probably regarded as one of the worst quality pistols ever foisted on the American public. Yet they sold very well. They were very, very cheap. Usually, at the time, they were under $30. Um, it's a 22 long rifle pistol. There was some talk of some dumb explosive bullets at that time, which was never really borne out. The RG-22 was a double action revolver made of what's commonly referred to as pot metal, which is like a zinc alloy. They made them in a couple of different calibers, a couple of different barrel lengths. His was a 22, and it had I believe it was 2.5 inch barrel on that one. And they're not necessarily regarded as quality weapons by any means. You find them on Gunbroker now for probably about $24. They're really kind of pieces of crap and considered to be more dangerous shooter than a target. Um, Interesting fact about John Hinckley Jr. His parents happen to have been the largest donors to the George Herbert Walker Bush campaign in when he was running against Reagan, prior to him being the vice president. And John Hinckley Jr.'s parents were scheduled to have dinner with Neil Bush of the Silverado savings and loan debacle a few years later. They were scheduled to have dinner at his house the night of the assassination. And just going off on another little tangent here a little bit, Ted Cruz just hired Neil Bush to be the financial director of the campaign. So
Okay, keep your friends close.
that's about it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
when
you
you
don't
look at
really.
this when you look at this revolver, I mean, it's not pretty.
It's really not. It's kind of an outdated, definite design, and very clunky. Not necessarily something made for repetitive work.
Yeah, no, and when you look at it, the hand grips seem extremely small. The hammer looks odd, and just the entire profile doesn't seem like it's a functional pistol.
Now, this is one of the pistols that was imported before the 1968 gun ban. The 1968 gun ban did come about as part of Lee Harvey Oswald purchasing that Mannlicher Carcano with that amazing 6.5 bullet that does not deform upon hitting skulls and ribs and legs and shit of people. Uh, that resulted in the Gun Control Act. And for pistols, that mandated a certain number of points, and that's points of contact and points of destruction on the firearm. And RG was soon no longer.
Yeah. So that's and while
Well,
assassination did not occur, that's an honorable mention, I think.
I was a youngster when Reagan was assassinated. Oh man, second or third grade, and I remember watching the news about that. And just as a child, I would have, there was very many, much more news coverage of that than any other event in my life at that point. And it was, seeing the Secret Service deploy the Uzi back then, that was kind of an eye opener. And there was a lot of people shot and a lot of guns on display for the American consumer, probably for me not having like watched much of Vietnam on TV or anything. It was kind of reality come home a little bit at that point.
Yeah. Well, one of the ones that I want to talk about, and you tell me if you agree this is a important one, is the weapon that was used to attempt an assassination on Pope John Paul II, the 9mm Browning high power.
I was going to go into that one next because I would almost link the assassination of Reagan and the assassination attempt of both Reagan and the Pope as two kind of seminal moments in the old American order.
Yeah, I think this is what really began the gun control push in the United States. Especially with James Brady taking taking the bullet that paralyzed him and really started Gun Control Inc.
Right, and there was also a police officer, Thomas Delahuntty, who was shot. Let's not forget him. I mean, these are horrible events, but never let a crisis go to waste. So, anyways, get back to the Pope. I believe that was May 1983 when the Pope was shot.
1981. So very, very, very closely related.
Yeah, and not far after Reagan got shot, and it was a Turkish national, Mehmet Ali Agca, who the Pope has now forgiven and probably, I don't know, whatever his situation is. I think he might still be in prison. He was a member of a Turkish criminal gang and used the Browning 9mm to shoot Pope and really kind of made world leaders look at the security they took and kind of created more of a gulf between the people and the elite, so to speak. So anyways, getting back to the Browning high power, what can you not say about the Browning high power? It's one of the most widely used designs in the world, made by several different manufacturers. These are designs. One of the few pistols to have been issued by both the Axis and the Allies in World War II. Many different manufacturers, like I said, both during the war and after the war, really became the standard for all 9mm pistols following its introduction. The name high power refers to its magazine capacity of 13 rounds with 9mm, 9 by 19, and that's just tremendous at that time. A huge step over the predecessor pistol, which would have been like the 1903 or the 1910 Browning, which was in 380 and held the most, I believe, what was it, 8 rounds, 10 rounds in one of those?
Right.
So this was a monumental design of the pistol. It had several different names. P35 was its original designation. Designed for the French military contract. They ended up not taking it, and Browning went hog wild with it afterwards.
Spent some time in the British Army.
Spent some time in the British Army. Spent some time pretty much every one of the Commonwealth armies. Very highly respected in the Middle East. Americans love them. I can't say enough good things about Browning high power. To me, Browning high power is exactly how a hand can fit and function in your hand. To get no better than that.
And you've had an interesting high power in your collection.
I've had a couple of interesting high powers. I had a high power variant made by a Canadian company, English, which is a washing machine company originally, and it was part of the war effort. And it was a Lend-Lease pistol. It was made in Canada, and it was shipped to China, and or it was to be shipped to China. And according to my documentation on it, it was one of the first ones to not be shipped to Chiang Kai-shek, who was leader of the nationalist Chinese fighting the Japanese and somewhat fighting the communists at the same time. Because he was no longer using the weapons given to fight, he was selling them and selling dope or buying dope or something like that. So anyways, I had one of those. It's a really nifty pistol. It had a tangent sight on the rear with 300-meter markings, which I thought was sort of optimistic, and it had something that is kind of an interesting, unavailable item anymore. It's got a shoulder stock, which means it's the holster, great big wood holster with a flap top on it, and you can slide that into the butt of the gun and kind of turn it into a short rifle.
That would give you your pistol caliber carbine.
That's right. It's a pistol caliber carbine. That's kind of a no-no now, unless you have a stamp. That particular model of Browning high power did not need a stamp. It was considered a curio and relic, and since it was all matching and current, everything was good on that pistol. I didn't need a stamp on it. I no longer have that pistol. I did sell it. I made a lot of money on that pistol, to be honest with you. A lot more than I thought I would.
And that's the best way to sell anything.
And it's kind of heartbreaking for me to have sold it, but honestly, I never really shot it. And there's a good reason why. Now, that being a pistol that was made in, it was a CH4, were the beginning serial numbers on that pistol. So I believe that would have left Canada sometime, or scheduled to have left Canada sometime around like July of 43. And it didn't go. Maybe October of 43. And that design is in the very first of the high powers. I guess you could call them the Mark I, the very first series. And it's got a couple of different design differences compared to today's high power. One of them being the internal attractor. And if you were to look at the right side of the slide on the Browning high power of these older models, see a little ring faintly in there. That's a different piece of metal. Well, that's the extractor. And those are known to break at times, with use, and sometimes, differing powers of ammo, and, who's to say how this pistol had been used in its, 60-year history before it got to me. And just didn't feel really good about it. And then one day I kind of did a little bit of hunting and tried to find one of those ring extractors, and I could not find it. And I contacted some people who are sort of famous in the Browning world, and trying to get a hold of this part. And there was one aftermarket producer of them, or that wasn't even current. The guy just happened to have a stock of them. There were no more originals. So I pretty much got rid of all the old model high powers after that. I couldn't imagine going out and shooting it and that thing busted and not being able to fix it.
Yeah, that would have been pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I mean, I truly like Browning high powers enough, but I just can't just collect them and not shoot them. So all them Mark I went out the window. But yeah, I made good money on that. I sold that thing for like $2,600.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about going back to the War of Northern Aggression?
Well, that's an interesting time frame, right? We got a lot of lies and a lot of misconceptions about that time frame, but yeah, a lot of changes that resulted in today's society.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple different assassinations that happened during that time, but really post the war, Northern Aggression is we're talking about here. And go back to the guy on the $5 bill.
Yep. We're talking about the Abraham Lincoln assassination, and specifically the derringer that a failed actor named John Wilkes Booth used to assassinate Abraham Lincoln.
Now, this is I believe it's a 41 caliber Senator. Is that right?
Yeah, this is muzzle loading pistol.
Right. So what we're referring to is a black powder pistol that's got a exposed hammer on it. It's ancient design. Uh, Currently, now, if you wish to buy one, you can buy one through a catalog and have it delivered to your home because it's not even considered a firearm anymore.
It is not.
It was more of a weapon that you would load and have to fire within a certain time frame. Not like a cartridge today that if you can load it and let it sit in the door of yours. This you could not do
No,
that.
no, you had to be ready to make use of it.
Right, and by making use of it, use it within an hour, perhaps. Subject to moisture. Well, actually, let's discuss how a black powder uh, derringer like this would work.
So what you're going to have on there is basically in the same setup as what you could think of like a modern black powder, where you would have to fill the barrel with the gunpowder, the wad or the patch, and then the ball. Very very similar, but like I said, you're dealing with a much shorter barrel.
Much shorter barrel, less accuracy, less power from that, and thus you have a large caliber like 40 caliber, which is a good size. That's over 10 millimeters.
Yeah, definitely. And what's also worse is that, like I said, you have this exposed hammer, and yeah, this isn't something
And
that.
there's a couple different designs. There's flint locks, which would actually have a small piece of stone that was scraped to create a spark to ignite some sort of touch hole or some sort of fuse. Or there was a cap, a percussion
Right.
cap, very similar to a primer today.
Yeah, and
And
then
you put that on.
this is the design right there with the percussion cap is what was used.
Very interesting time frame for firearms design. Lots of use of very old firearms and advent of some of the newer firearms coming into play.
Right. So I think that was a seminal moment in the direction of our country because it first off it changed
Well,
the path of
we got a guy
our
on a five
government at
dollar
that
bill.
point. Yeah,
Got a guy on a $5 bill.
yeah, it changed the path of our government. Largely was seen as a affront to common decency, and well, there's some debate today about removing the political elites of a conflict, and that was one of those in which John Wilkes Booth believed that that's what he was doing.
And John Wilkes Booth tried to escape, jumped from the balcony, broke his leg, and hid out in a barn, and was found a couple days later by a doctor, I believe.
Yep,
Correct?
yep, and he was shot in the barn.
Shot in the barn.
Yep,
Dead men tell no tales.
yep. So he was hanged.
Another lone nut gunman at work.
Yeah. So that's one of those things that when people say things, he muttered the motto for the state of Virginia, being sic semper tyrannis, which means thus to tyrants, or thus always to tyrants.
And that is probably, if you can guess what thus always tiring means, you
Yeah. So yeah, your turn. Your turn.
let's see. We can kind of move back to Europe here, and got a Swedish diplomat, Olaf Palm, who was well loved by his countrymen, was involved in some Middle Eastern dealings, looking out for the rights of people there, and he was shot on the street, and he used a 357 Magnum revolver. It was rumored to be Israeli Mossad that murdered this guy. And interestingly enough, there was empty shells found at the shooting scene, which tied it back to the 357 Magnum revolver. Now, all be kind of clear on the operation of a revolver. You swing that cylinder open and you load it up with 6 rounds, and you close that up and fire a round and pull that trigger and advance that cylinder. The bullet stays within the cylinder, it just moves out of the way, and another one moves in from the bottom. There's really no need to dump your shells there unless it's even evidence.
Yeah, and nobody likes evidence.
So, what was that? Smith and Wesson. It was I believe it was a Model 66, or is it 680 shot with?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Um,
This is
anyhow,
long before my time.
no, actually, what was it? It was you were younger. You must have been about 6, 7 years old when that shot, I would guess.
Yeah,
But
long
anyhow,
before I started caring.
who you got up next?
So you know what I was thinking of going a little pop culture reference. If we could all just imagine what would happen if John Lennon would still be around.
Imagine all the meaning.
Yep. So 38 special Charter Arms revolver.
Charter Arms, an American manufacturer, kind of makes a decent quality handgun that is affordable, made in the United States. Many of them have been sold. Many police and security use them as private weapons. Not a lot have been issued. And I think that's due to its value nature, not necessarily compete for large military contracts. They mostly focus on the recreational market. Bunch of different models. It's Pathfinder. The Charter is a nice model they make in 22 and 22 long rifle and 22 Magnum. Bulldog, Bulldog. Well, there's pit bulls, bulldogs, a bunch of different dog revolvers from them, and nice little affordable pistol. Not necessarily top-notch in quality, but didn't funk almost this time.
Yeah, and one of the things is that in the time when this pistol was purchased, it was $169. So we're talking
And that's
1980.
right. And if you were to look at the price of a Charter Arms revolver right now, you see it's somewhere near around $400, $375, $400, maybe $425. I have a friend who's seriously into the Bulldog pub in 44 Special. He's a firm believer in that round and that combination of firearm and ammunition. Little interesting note: Bulldog in 44 Special was also used by the son of Sam on his mini murders in 1977.
Yeah, in the San Francisco Bay Area.
No, it was used in New York.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking the Zodiac guy.
I don't even know what the Zodiac Killer was.
Yeah.
Unless it was the Zodiac Killer and that woman. Used the 38.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the kind of the exception to the rule here. The Remington 760 in 30-06 that was used to assassinate Martin Luther King Jr.
That is a interesting rifle and another interesting case. Another black leader under heavy observation by the FBI and CIA and forerunners to the NSA. Receives a relatively serious rifle hunting round from not too far. I believe that they said that James Earl Ray was less than 100 yards away from the target. And what is that? That's 260 is that what that is, right?
Oh, you're talking 260 is what?
As the ammunition. What caliber was that, right?
No, 30-06.
Oh, it was 30-06. I apologize.
Right.
Well, 30-06, that's a monstrous round, 72 by 63. I believe that rifle was pump action.
Yeah, it was a pump action center fire.
And if you think those hold 3+1, that's a fairly devastating combination. It's definitely not a combat weapon by any means.
No,
It's
no. This
more
is
of
this
a,
is strictly a hunting rifle. This is a. It's got a 4-round detachable box magazine.
and this is something that we kind of have to take into account that it was definitely referred to as a sniper weapon many, many times. Now, that's using a military connotation designed to instill fear in people. This is a hunting rifle with optics,
With a scope.
right? And that same combination in the military does, I guess, make a sniper's rifle. But when you're used in a civilian aspect, it's designed, I think, to instill fear and
In four-legged animals in the forest.
four-legged animals in the forest. But when they mention a sniper rifle being used on in a crime, and remember all of these are not necessarily political acts; they're all crimes. Uh, they end up using the military terminology to scare what our future fear Trump says are the low information voters.
Yeah,
And
certainly. And this
you know,
is one of those things that just the name alone has a negative connotation. Regardless of what the actual mission that is performed. This is something that in popular culture, somebody who is an assassin is a sniper.
and we see the victimization and frankly the villainization of all the firearms used that we've spoken of tonight is the weapons of the killers, and really they're weapons of criminals at this point. They were just tools used in an act
By desperate
by people
folks.
with people
Desperate.
with ill intent,
Yeah.
and maybe in some of the cases people who there's more questions about their intent and their involvement, but in the end, it's a crime, and they just use a tool. They could have, used something different. They could have used Molotov cocktail or a car or
Yeah. A
amp or
wrench. you know,
yeah.
like I said, in New York City, there's been a lot more stabbings lately, and the mayor there attributes that to the lack of availability of guns, and has been roundly criticized by the chiefs of police.
And so, and we see with the tide turning in the United States, and Hillary taking 5 states tonight, and we've got trade deals going through that are not good. We've got communists in the house, and yeah, we're buy a gun, people. Buy a gun. And when
while
you
you
buy a
while you
gun,
still can.
that's right. Buy it while you still can, and take a couple minutes and learn the 4 rules of gun safety, which I'd like to cover right now.
Definitely.
All right. So, first rule of gun safety: every firearm is loaded. Please visually and physically ensure that it is not loaded. Go ahead and open that action, swing that cylinder out, break it open, and go ahead and put your finger in the chamber. Make sure there's no round in there. And rule number 2 is keep that muzzle pointed in a safe direction at all times when you're looking at that thing. Kind of make sure it's pointed down or downrange, or straight up in the sky or something. Don't aim it at anybody you don't wish to destroy. Rule number 3 is know what your target is and know what is beyond your target at all times. Do not set up let's just say a table with some pop cans in your front yard right about the time the kids are riding bikes home from school. That's not a good idea. And the most important rule is the 4th rule: keep your booger hook off the bang switch.
You can't say it any more plain than that.
That's it. Don't put your finger on the trigger in the trigger guard until you're ready to actually pull the trigger. None of the accidental, quote unquote, discharges happen without the trigger being pulled. So they're not really accidental, they're negligent because somebody did not take the care and the proper training and the proper attention to keeping others safe with the tool.
Yeah,
So,
and one of those things to be careful of is that in the event that Hillary gets elected, she is going to pursue legislation that allows people with a relative who dies in violence related to a firearm to sue the manufacturers of those firearms.
Hillary is Satan in a dress, and I'm surprised that is not in prison. I'm telling you, Nick, She got 2,100 emails, 30 times as many as Bradley Sex Change Manning had, and she's out campaigning in winning states and pay. I want to know exactly how much these bastards pay per vote. What the breakdown of money spent per vote garnered is. That's
Yeah.
what I want.
We will never know the truth. That's the sad part.
No. I've kind of like thought for a long time. It's not really an election. It's just a menu change at the Bob's Big Boy and a pencil. And this time the alternatives are menu choices would be poop soup, shit sandwich, or a turd salad. And the price has gone up 30%.
The shit on a shingle is still free if you're in the military.
Yeah, for a while.
That's cream to beef for you that don't know.
Yeah, well, shit sandwich, poop soup, and turd salad are the politicians. For those of you who don't know, it's a horrible fucking menu, and everyone has to take a bite.
Yep.
So,
Well,
I don't know.
this is an interesting week. We had some conflicting schedules last week, so we weren't able to be on live. But it's good to get back on the saddle and bring our love for all things firearms out to our listening audience.
It's been good to do it. I really kind of enjoyed doing the show with a little more in depth firearms and historical perspective, and get a little bit of my opinion on this one. Kind of enjoyed talking about it.
Yeah, it's one of those weeks where we don't exactly get a whole lot of time to go into a lot of different firearms, but I think we covered quite a large spread and a large segment of the firearm population over time.
And all of these firearms are probably available online on Sunday.
Yep. There we go. We're getting the bumper. So I want to say thanks, Jules. Michael, thank you.
Nicholas, it was wonderful. I appreciate it. Jules, thank you for all you do. UCY rocks. Everybody, you got a couple bucks, throw it Jules' way. You should use it right now. Everybody, thanks a lot. Take care.